Hey guys, it's the Planter TCG here. This is my first video, of course, of hopefully many videos in the future. So I just wanted to say hello and kind of get to know you guys. So I just want to give a little background on myself. I have been playing the Pokemon TCG for the past 6 months, and as a child, I primarily dabbled in Yu-Gi-Oh mainly, and Pokemon was more so video game wise. It was my main kind of focus on that. I usually had collected cards in the past for both Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon. But that was kind of more so around the Diamond and Pearl era. So the objective of today's video of what I wanted to do was kind of go over my main kind of deck that I have at the moment and some of maybe the tweaks that I've made to it. I do have to credit Azul GG for the primary structure and also the build itself. However, I've made a little bit of tweaks after some recent tournaments that I've been through that I think might be able to make it a little bit more successful, or at least help me out on the errors and mistakes that I have made personally as well. So, of course, on my Charizard playmat here, you can kind of guess what my deck itself is. And of course, it is Arvinzard, or at least Charizard is what I'm playing, Charizard EX. And we're currently in the Paldean Fates era right now, so we're approaching the rotation here pretty shortly in the beginning of April. But this is the current deck list that I have at the moment, and I'd love to share it with you guys. So, of course, starting out with the Charizard build, we have to have our foundation, which our foundation is our Charmanders. So, as right now, I am playing the Charmander from Obsidian Fates, and then the three from Mew, or from Pokemon 151. The primary objective of these guys is to get them on the board as fast as you're able to, just so that you can get your Zards up and going. I've used Blazing Dark Destruction quite a bit to get rid of whether that's Path to the Peak or whatnot. And then this version of the Obsidian Flames came in pretty clutch at one of my recent tournaments because I was playing against a Roaring Moon, and I was able to use Heat Tackle to take out the remaining 30 health that the Roaring Moon had. So pretty important attacker if you're in the right spots. But I thankfully had a copy of this, and I was able to hit the Roaring Moon for knockouts, take 2 prizes from just a single prizer, of course. So there's nothing better than that, of course. We have our Charmeleon, running just one of these. This is important for any type of deck where I might be dealing with the devolution, and if a Charizard comes back into my hand, I'm able to just essentially evolve it again next round, unless the Charmeleon itself is knocked out. So, and this is also can be a really good attacker if need be as well, for 2 energy cost. So there we go. And then the beauty itself, which is Charizard EX. Absolutely love this attacker or Pokemon. And for 2 energy, we can ramp up as we kind of get behind in the game, which can definitely clutch up sometimes. So I absolutely love this build just because of not only the art, but the Pokemon itself. So yeah. And then, of course, like I was mentioning earlier, I'm doing an Arvinzard build, so the Pidgey and Pidgeot is a great search engine for any type of card that I need in the deck. Of course, like I was mentioning earlier, the cards like Path to the Peak or, potentially the Pidgeot getting gussed up can be a detriment towards the deck itself. But I'm running a 2-2 line in regards to the Pidgey and Pidgeot. So my Pidgey's here. This also can be very useful in the early game in case, I was able to attach an energy and I wanted to get some more Pokemon on my bench. We can use Call for Family to grab those out as well. And again, that calls for 2 basic Pokemon to go on your bench. So, and then, of course, another beauty of the deck is Pidgeot EX. Again, like I was mentioning, you can quick search for any card that you want in the deck itself, which is very overpowered. And majority of time, I'm quick searching for either, rare candies or an Ultra Ball to try to pull out my Evo Pokemon. Or on top of that, if I have already fully set up my board, I can sit there and grab Boss's Orders or Ionos to either guss up enemy Pokemon or disturb their hands as well. So, and absolutely love this art from Obsidian Flames. I'm super happy that I have 2 copies of it as well. Okay, so moving on to some extra Pokemon that I have in the deck. We have Lumineon V here. Can be very important if I'm, lacking some Arvins or lacking an Iono or something of that sort, to where I can Ultra Ball for this Pokemon, have it in my hand, and slap it down on my bench, and use the ability to search out any type of supporter card that I like. So definitely can be very helpful, of course. This card I feel is very underrated in the deck, and I have another Pokemon as well that I'm going to go over here in a second that I feel is very underrated and has really clutched up some games. But Rotom V here is very crucial in the early game, I would definitely say. However, can be a liability in the later game, and I'll kind of go over an example of that here in a second. But Rotom V can be very important in regards to drawing more to your hand if in case, you didn't have the greatest of starts. Kind of gives a little pillow to say of sorts, to hopefully guarantee that you're set up for your next turn. So, and going into that kind of example of being a liability, in one of my most recent tournaments, I neglected to remember that my Rotom V was sitting on my bench, and unfortunately it was gusted up to my active Pokemon and knocked out for 2 prize cards. So I've actually, because of this, I have 2 cards that I can play potentially that can help me with either discarding the Rotom or putting it back in my hand, whatever the case may be. But definitely, I definitely feel that in the future, I'm going to be a little bit more cognizant of that error that I had made, and hopefully I don't make it again. But that's all about living and learning. That's how it is. So moving on to the next Pokemon, Mew here. It can be very important in the early game. Definitely a Pokemon that I'm not terrified of having in my active in the first turn, because I'm able to sit there and search for either a Battle VIP Pass, Rare Candy, Ultra Ball, whatever I'd like to search for, and hopefully get out of those top 6 cards from my my deck. So again, very important item searching tool in the beginning, and one that, I'm not afraid if the opponent takes it out as a 1 prizer, because majority of my deck is 2 prizers, so kind of shifts from being 6 prizes that they need to gain to almost 7. So definitely a card that I enjoy having. And then of course I have my protection here in regards to dealing with damage done to bench Pokemon or damage counters. So Manaphy being useful for Radiant Greninja, of course, kind of the primary attacker that you think of when protecting against damage on your bench Pokemon. So very useful. And then Jirachi for the pesky little Sableyes that you go up against. Definitely crucial. I had a game this past weekend or at a tournament where my opponent had gussed up the Jirachi to sit there and knock it out so that they could potentially use their Sableye. Thankfully, I still had the Pidgeot EX, so I was able to pull out a Super Rod and get that back into my deck, just so that I could put it back on my bench before, too much havoc was caused. So again, a very important card, and I feel that it's a really good insurance card as well. So, and then lastly, the most underrated card of my deck, and was able to clutch up quite a bit at my recent tournament, was Radiant Zard. This card comes in clutch at the end of the game. Once you get down to that 1-2 prize cards left for your opponents, that you're able to sit there and just attach an energy and hit for 250. Majority of the time, I already have a boss's order in hand, and all I need is 2 prize cards left, or at least for myself, and I'll sit there and guss up, whether that's a 2 prize or whatnot, and hit for knockout. So very important card. Absolutely love it in my deck, and has definitely been helping out quite a bit. So that's my Pokemon for the deck. Of course, I was mentioning earlier, Arvin is very important. Whether that be I'm turn 2 or elected for turn 2, that I'll sit there and grab a Battle VIP Pass, and then for Silstone majority of the time, since I'll have my Rotom out, and kind of get started with the game there. So you guys probably know more with how Arvin works, but definitely helpful. Running 2 Ionos, hand disruption for my opponents. More than likely, if I don't have a hand that I'm really caring too much about, I will use the Ionos. So, and I'm pretty sure in most decks it's a staple at this point. And then we are running 3 Boss's Orders. As I was mentioning earlier, this is a very great support card in regards to gussing up your enemy's Pokemon to then attack to. So that kind of speaks for itself. Then I'm running two other cards in my supporters. We have Professor's Research. Again, depending on how my hand looks, if I'm not too crazy about it, or maybe I've used some Ultra Balls to dwindle my hand down and I want to go and draw more, this is the card to use. So Professor's Research has definitely been helpful. And then this is another card that I was mentioning, going back to that Rotom V that I was talking about. Professor Turo's allows me to take one of my Pokemon in play and put it into my hand. So again, for that liability that I had with the Rotom V earlier, if I was able to quick search for this card, or if I still had it in my hand, whatever the case may be, I would be able to kind of eliminate that liability by playing Professor's Turo. And there'll be another card later on that I'll go over that is also helpful as well. So the main bridge of this whole entire deck is rare candies. Playing four count on this. Of course, I want to use this to evolve our Charmanders into Charizards, and then likewise with Pidgey to Pidgeots. So pretty self-explanatory there. And then we are playing 4 Battle VIP Pass, okay? So majority of the time in the beginning of the game, if, I don't already have a Charmander or I don't have a Pidgey, definitely using the Battle VIP Pass at the beginning of the game to sit there and, pull out more Charmanders or Pidgeys. On top of that as well, I do sometimes prioritize that Rotom V so that I can then pull out and draw more cards. So I know if I'm not able to attack, that I'm going to utilize that Rotom V to help out in those scenarios. So again, Battle VIP Pass only really useful in that first turn. However, looking forward to rotation and using the Puffins to be able to get out some 70 HP or less Pokemon in the future onto my bench. So running 4 Ultra Balls, again, crucial in picking out any Pokemon that you don't already have in your hand. Majority of the time you're using this on evolution Pokemon, or as I was mentioning earlier, you can use on the Lumineon or any other cards that you might need after your first turn, essentially. So again, the only drawback about this is discarding 2 cards in your hand, but you just have to be cognizant of which cards you don't want to have in your hand anymore, and kind of weighing those pros and cons. So Ultra Ball, again, is very, very helpful in the deck. I'm also running 1 Level Ball. Again, as I was mentioning, you might go up against some of those cases where you're going against a TM Devolution, and you might want to pull out that Charmeleon so that you can evolve one of those Charmanders, and then just kind of have that one step to, after a Devolution, to just attach the Charizard EX again. So Level Ball, helpful in getting the Charmeleon. On top of that, if you notice that, hey, your first hand's a little thin, and you need to pull out that Charmeleon or Charmander or Pidgey, you can definitely use the Level Ball as well. So that's what that is in the deck. I will go over this as well with the Super Rods. So running 2 Super Rods, I do have kind of a larger count here than some other Zard decks. But Super Rod can be definitely helpful in, like I was mentioning earlier, getting that mana feedback that I needed. On top of that, you will see later on why I'm running 2, primarily because of my energy count as well. So if I want to be able to get that Charizard EX back into the deck, or whatever Pokemon and energies that I need to get back in there, I at least have a combination that I can do that with the Super Rods. Okay. I am running 1 Counter Catcher, so again, this puts my kind of total with the bosses up to 4 in regards to gussing abilities. So again, Counter Catcher only if I'm behind with Charizard am I able to use this, but it's definitely helpful in those scenarios where you might want to be able to use an Arven and then use a Counter Catcher to guss up their one of their bench Pokemon. So absolutely love the art of this card as well. Then we are running 2 Lost Vacuum. So Lost Vacuum is going to help out against any stadium blocks that I might deal with. Again, primarily Path to the Peak. That's the only one that really gets to me. But Lost Vacuum is definitely crucial in helping out with that. And then I'll go over some stadiums as well that will be able to bump Path to the Peak as well. So Lost Vacuums, and then lastly our Switch. So anytime that I might be in a tough situation where, I don't have the energy to attach and then retreat, the Switch can definitely be helpful for that as well. Okay. And then going on to our final cards here, we're coming kind of to the end of the video, but we're going to go on to our tools. So as I was mentioning earlier, Force Seal Stone, crucial to attaching to whether that's Rotom or Lumineon to search for a card. This can be definitely helpful in the beginning of the game to where, if I need to potentially get more Pokemon on my bench, or if I need that last rare candy to get into a Pidgeot or Charizard, this can definitely be helpful for that as well. And then I'm running Vitality Band. The biggest use that I've seen for this is primarily when it comes to middle game, and you know, my opponent already has taken 3 prize cards, or I've taken you know, I've taken a certain amount of prize cards, but primarily this is going to be used for those Giratina V-Stars or Arceus V-Star or Pidgeot EX, to where if my opponent has already drawn 3 or more prize cards, then I have the ability to be able to knock out. Because remember, 180 plus 30 for every prize card is Charizard EX's attack. So this definitely comes in helpful in getting rid of that, because majority of the time at 3 prize cards you're gonna be hitting for 270, and then the additional 10 will be able to knock out majority of those V-Stars or the you know, stage 1, stage 2 EXs that you might be playing against. Okay, and then definitely helpful in the mirror matches, Devolution. I've been using this quite a bit on the TCG Live game, but it's always funny going back and forth with an opponent, whether that's a mirror match or whatnot, or they've been primarily using rare candies to evolve all of their Pokemon. It definitely can crush some dreams by using this. So that is Devolution for you. And then getting to the end here, we're running 2 Artisan, again, to search for my basic Pokemon, whether that be Pidgey or Charmander. We're going to use Collapse Stadium. Again, this is another card that is useful in helping with that situation that I had with the Rotom V, and also can be a detriment to my opponent as well. So especially if they have a full bench. And then lastly, to finish off the video here, we are running 6 of our fire energy. So again, as I was mentioning earlier, Super Rod is crucial in helping to cycle these back into the deck whenever I need them to. And I feel I've actually been pretty comfortable. Previous Charizard decks that I had ran a little bit more energies. I think at one moment I was doing Charizard, Pidgeot, and Arceus, but at that time I was running more fire energies and whatnot. But I actually really like, this is kind of a really good sweet spot, especially with the Super Rod, that it makes me a little bit more comfortable knowing about my energies and how many I have, and not being too concerned when, you know, I prize 1 or 2 of them initially in the game as well. So that's pretty much the gist of the deck itself. Again, Charizard EX is my main deck that I'm playing at this time, and I've been playing it at multiple tournaments and look forward to playing it in the future as well. I think this will definitely be a deck that in the future, essentially after rotation here in the beginning of April, this will be a deck that will continue to flourish and do well. So yeah, again, I appreciate you guys tagging along today and kind of going over the deck that I have at the moment. I am always willing, you know, wanting to improve as a player, so as much practice as I can get with this deck, I can feel a little bit more comfortable with things as well. So I do have other decks that I'll probably be showcasing here on the channel quite a bit. I do have a Lost Zone Giratina, I do have a Chen Pao, I do have a Miraidon, I do have a Roaring Moon, and I have a Meowscarada deck, which that is definitely fun to play with. And then lastly, I am currently building up a Serena EX deck as well. So again, guys, please feel free to follow and subscribe, and look forward to seeing you in later videos. Bye-bye.